Hi, I'm Jagriti Dougal and I'm one of the directors for Soho Road BID. Now today we have come together with a collaboration of organisations who have come together for a very good initiative regarding young people and homeschooling. I'd like to introduce our first guest, Gurpreet Bhatia from Herbert Solicitors. Welcome Gurpreet, and thank you for coming and being one of the organisers for this great initiative. If you could just explain your actual role within this project itself.
Thank you very much, Jagriti. I'm pleased to be involved with this campaign. How I got involved in it was when, at the start of the year, Gary Bowman, who's the manager of Handsworth Association of Schools, contacted me and said, we've got this problem because many of the youngsters in and around the schools in Handsworth were having to either share laptops and other devices to study at home, and there seemed to be a huge shortage of those devices. And so we had some conversations, and then we got Soho Road BID involved to try and get some money together through business so that we could acquire laptops or other devices which could be used by the students, because we found, and there's been a national coverage on this matter, that there have been shortages across the country. In fact, at one time BBC led a campaign and still doing so. So what I was able to do was connecting with some of the network that I have and start promoting the campaign. And as a result of that, we've had a significant contribution from an organisation, which I'll let other people speak about because they're also connected. But we find that there's this digital inequality, particularly in the schools locally, and some of the youngsters. How is it possible for them to study without devices in terms of home learning? So I'm pleased to say that even my firm, I am a partner in Harbin Singh & Company Solicitors. We're also supporting this campaign, encourage other businesses in the Soho Road BID and wider community to support this initiative. So that was my involvement and how I got involved in the campaign and spreading the word about this wonderful initiative.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And it is definitely a great initiative. Now, coming to yourself, Gary, homeschooling, young people, as we say that young people are our future generation. Mm-hmm. So education is very, very important. But during this pandemic, it's very difficult, obviously, attending school.
Yes.
So if you just talk about, you're from the Handsworth Association of Schools. Tell us more about HAS, as we say in short,
yes, and
how we actually came together, and also getting Soho Road BID involved as well, heavily involved really.
Well, the Handsworth Association of Schools, let's call it the association for short, has been around since 1999. Wow. And has been supporting schools in terms of school improvement, supporting families, trying to do work around learning resources, tackling poverty, all sorts of things that we get involved in. But when this, we had a meeting of head teachers. We meet regularly as head teachers. And at this particular meeting at the beginning of this year, schools had just come back. Well, actually they hadn't come back because the government had announced that schools were going to be closed at the beginning of January, and therefore schools were really very, very anxious. The head teachers were saying, well, what are we going to do? Because we've got all these children who we were expecting to be able to bring back into school, who now are going to have to go back to remote learning, and they knew it wasn't working before Christmas. Last time there was a lockdown, they couldn't get the remote learning out to pupils because there was sometimes no Wi-Fi, sometimes no devices, or a family of maybe 5 or 6 children trying to work with one device, sharing at different levels, and you can imagine the tension that would create in the family and the difficulty and the stress for the students. So we said at that meeting, at the school's request, will you approach businesses? So we said, well, we'll approach the Soho BID and see what they can do. We'll approach some other contacts. And through that, this campaign started. So the campaign's only a few weeks old, but it's a very urgent campaign because the schools, the pandemic will reach its peak, and eventually, our children will be able to go back to schools. But we want them to go back having had the opportunity to learn remotely, whilst they're not able to attend school.
As we see at the present moment, that homeschooling seems to be like the new norm. Is that correct? At the moment.
At the moment.
Time, and we're hoping it doesn't really last, because going into school actually helps the young people with their this social and you know, interacting with other young people, as well as education in school is different to actual homeschool. Would you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd all prefer it if our children go to school in the normal way. It's just not possible at the moment, and it may not be possible fully for some time, because we don't know what the consequences of the pandemic are. So our schools are actually being very innovative. They're recording lessons, they're doing live lessons with the few pupils who are in school and broadcasting them. They're introducing innovative learning resources to make the lessons more interactive. But if you can't then get access to them because you haven't got a remote device, that opportunity for that child is lost. So we think it's a mix and match approach, really. Of course we want the children to be back at school as quickly as possible, but maybe we're going to learn something from this which will stand us in good stead going forward, because remote learning actually is a good way to learn too. It's just not the best way. So you know, I think whatever we do here, it's not just about the short term. I think there's a long-term benefit as well of getting more families able to use remote devices, because it brings so much additional educational value to the children.
No, definitely. Now I'd like to bring in Bob Balu, who is the chair of Soho Road BID, and also Rakesh Sonu, who is the interim manager for Soho Road BID. Welcome. And Soho Road BID, Bob, starting with yourself, please tell us more about Soho Road BID itself and how important it is for the Soho Road BID to be involved in such a great project.
Right, the Soho Road BID, basically we have over 700 businesses that we represent. We all pay a levy towards the running of the operations. We're combating security, the environment, marketing the area and so forth. And we've got all the schools within the vicinity, the grammars, that partake are and member and levy payers. And with them having this problem, it was just right for us to partake with this good service that GERPIT brought to us. And we've gone out to the businesses and seeking help and seeing if they've got the old laptops, old tablets, and maybe financially to bring some funds into the to donate money towards this event. And it was a no-brainer. We had to partake into it.
No, of course, and I think that's really good, especially for Soho Road BID itself, having so many businesses part of Soho Road. Rakesh, coming to yourself now. I know you made yourself and Gary made communication through GERPIT. Tell us more about that communication and obviously with Soho Road BID as one of the main, is that correct, main drop-offs?
Yeah, well, Soho Road BID is going to be the drop-off point for anyone that is wanting to donate their old media devices, whether it's a laptop, an old iPad or Samsung tablet of any sort. So we've decided as a collective, the Hands of Association, all the key partners, as a good central point is to, if anybody from the public or even businesses want to drop them off, then the Soho Road BID office, which is 118A Soho Road, Suite 2, Balu Elite House. And then if you don't find the address, you can also get in touch with us via our email address, which is bidmanager@sohoroadbid.org. Those are like social media, so it's Facebook/Soho Road BID, Instagram, again, Instagram/Soho Road BID. We're on all the social media platforms. So if you want to get in touch and you want to donate your devices, you're welcome to drop them off here. If you're in the local vicinity, do it collectively. If I can pick them up, I'll try and do that too. I just want to help. It's really, really important that kids don't fall behind on their learning. And the BID really wanted to be involved in that, especially when we have so many schools within our BID levy area. It was just right to be supportive of the community. At the end of the day, the BIDs, the businesses survive on what the community does around here, and going forward, it's the best thing for us. So when GERPIT and the Hands of Association got in touch, it just made sense, and so it was just decided that okay, let's get in touch with the BID, and then what we're going to do once we have a large collection of deposits of media devices, we're going to pass them on to a company called ICT Network Neighbourhoods. They provide the free Wi-Fi for Soho Road. Those that don't know, if you do come to Soho Road, you can get free Wi-Fi. You just log in at Soho Road, you go into your free Wi-Fi setting, and you can go. So the guys that set this up, the free Wi-Fi, they've voluntarily, really kindly said, okay, you know, any devices that are handed in, they will wipe them clean, sanitize them if they have to. I'll do that if I have to do. They wipe them clean, make sure it's all fully licensed, ready to use, and then all we got to do, hand them back to the Handsworth Association, and they'll allocate them to the schools that require them. Just today, we've had over 50 collections gone out to schools. That's 50 kids just in one day that needed these devices just so they can do their learning. And it's amazing how grateful the schools were. It's amazing appeal, amazing campaign, and I urge everyone to get involved. Even if it's an old laptop you haven't used for a while, even if the charge is missing or cables are missing, we're going to set up a GoFundMe page, a Soho Road one. I'll put it on the link on our Facebook page and we'll do the social media. And what we'll do is we'll buy them. So whatever we get on our GoFundMe page, we'll buy the chargers or cables to make sure those laptops and devices are working in full working order for the children.
So it's important to actually say that whether it's an old laptop or an old tablet, it doesn't really matter. It's important that these are actually donated, which will help the young people for their schooling as well. I'd like to now bring in Deb, who is also part of the Handsworth Association of Schools, but also a governor as well. Is that correct? Or governor for many, really?
Yes, I'm Project and Education Manager at the Handsworth Association, but I'm also a Chair of Governors at 2 of our local schools. So I get to see in front of the scenes and behind the scenes as to the impact that these devices will make. We've had, you know, like most schools, you know, in the country, we've had to adapt to the change in how we teach and how our children access learning. And as Gary mentioned earlier, you know, the impact with regards to children not having access to Wi-Fi, you know, is a major issue for some families. We've got families that have got 6, 7 children of varying ages, obviously. So you've got your secondary pupil, student who needs to do their online learning. You've got your primary student who needs, and how do you balance that? So, you know, we were very much aware of it. And in my role as a governor, you know, I've been fortunate enough to attend some live lessons and seeing the benefits and how children actually engage. And I mean, and it's very useful to be able to access the learning because it gives the children a chance to see their peers and and keep them away from isolation. But also for those children that are in school, the critical worker children, they also are part of that whole scenario. So they get to access the lessons all at the same time. So the live learning is good. But there are different platforms that the schools are using. So some of the schools will video their lessons and then the children have access to the lessons, and then they're able to talk via their phones and different platforms as well. They can email in and ask questions, but it's not the most ideal way to be learning on a long-term basis, and that's why we're saying whilst they are having to access learning and remote learning from home, we want to make sure that they have the best opportunity. So this has been great. The donation that we've had, the responses from the schools has been great. I mean, they're also trying to support, and they will ask friends and other people within the local community as well. But this initiative allows us to reach out far and wide, really, and let people know what's happening in their locality and how they can support, because I know people will want to do that.
And it's great. As you're saying, as well as like in front, you're also behind the scenes as well.
Yeah.
What has been the response from parents, and if you've actually communicated with any of the young people as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, I've been able to see parents are when it first started, obviously, the whole idea of remote learning was new to everybody, and so schools were having to work out what's the best way forward. So some will use Google Classrooms, some will use Microsoft Teams, and they've used other platforms as well. And so parents this time round have found that actually schools are a little more established with how they're making sure that children access the learning. So that's been lots of positive feedback, and you'll find that on the websites that parents will send in positive, and oh, I saw my child do this, I was able to be involved. But also for those more independent learners, being able to know that they're able to continue the learning, and they are, especially if they're working from home as well. I think what schools are trying to work out at the moment is how best to support their younger students who probably need that more interaction and support, but having the remote access just makes the difference for that interaction and that contact and that continued learning as well.
And I suppose it's great as well for young people and for the teachers, because for the young people, their education is still continuing, really. Even though it's remotely, it is actually still continuing itself. I mean, Gurpreet, coming back to yourself, when you heard about this project, when you got in contact with Gary and also the Soho Road BID, like the importance of it, and coming from like the background of a solicitor, I mean, how did you feel about the whole scenario, the whole project in itself? It is very important, and when we think about our young people and our kids who we see as the future, and they have, you know, the future beyond. What came through you? Your first approach was obviously like Gary and Soho Road BID. What made you get Soho Road BID involved?
So naturally, it's the business community is a very important part of the community, as well as all the other aspects of the community. I mean, I'm involved in numerous other voluntary organisations and charities. But the business community, I mean, what we really wanted, and me as a solicitor, we wanted to get other businesses involved. Naturally, so many businesses have got, you know, projects where they have old machines and old laptops, and then they refresh them every 2 years, 3 years, because they become dated in terms of what they can offer to those businesses. So then naturally, all businesses, not only Soho Road BID and the businesses within the BID, the wider community. So I've been reaching out to many other organisations, in fact across the country, large-scale corporates and other organisations, to try and get some kind of traction with them, and so that we can grow the campaign, and so that, you know, the youngsters in this particular locality, as I mentioned, I mean, I've spoken to other people that I know in schools outside of the Handsworth area, and some people have told me, teachers in those schools, when you compare that, you know, in some schools, every child has got a laptop of their own, and so when that came to my attention, then I thought, well, why shouldn't every child in the Handsworth area and the schools in Handsworth, why shouldn't every child have equal a laptop? So there's this sense of inequality there, which I think we need to bridge the gap there. Definitely. And so that gave me greater impetus to kind of work a bit more on this campaign, and contact many more organisations and people. So I'm pleased to say that, you know, we are moving forward, and as Gary's rightly mentioned, it's only been going for a couple of weeks, but it is, as Gary's rightly said, it's urgent, because you know, the need is now. Is the time to act was like yesterday, when we had in January, when we had this, because we've got children who are at home, and they're without the possibility and potential to learn. And you mentioned about the generations in the future, of course. I mean, we already have a skills issue in our parts anyway. And so for the future generations and business and commerce, if we've got a skilled workforce, then it impacts the economy in a much stronger way. And we need to have youngsters skilling up and training up. But if we don't have the facilities for them, then, you know, there's difficulties in achieving the outputs and targets. So I think, it's very, very important that we get as many people behind this campaign at this time. And of course, not just for the short term, for the long term, and the impact will be felt. I mean, at this time, if we fail to act as a community, getting together, because the people here, we've got academics and people in education here, we've got people from business here, Soho Road BID are involved. So we want to grow that kind of reach. And if we fail to act, then I think we won't be doing our duty in terms of towards our next generation. So I think that it's a very important thing to get behind this initiative.
Thank you. And before we actually go into our short break, Bob, quickly coming back to yourself, as you say, we've got many businesses on Soho Road. Have there been any communications with other businesses to get them involved in this initiative itself?
Yes, I think we've sent out some social media postings to businesses via email and via our various platforms, asking for businesses to bring in. I mean, if you look around, I think people have got 2-3 old devices sitting gathering dust, and like I say, if it's going to help somebody, educate them, then it's not doing them any good. So if people out there can hand it in to the Soho Road BID office, and if they don't have our details, I'm sure Akaal can pass that on. Yeah. We'll be grateful to take them. And like I said, we've got people volunteering to clear the data, wipe it, so there is nothing historically on there. And we rest assured everything will be safe, and it'll be there with somebody, some child out there that can learn from it. Yeah, and like I said, businesses, it's a bit difficult at the moment because with the lockdown, a lot of businesses are closed. I'd say about 70%, 80% of our businesses are closed, but we will try to get hold of them via we've got their numbers and contacts, and Rakesh will, he's got a list of numbers, and we'll talk to people directly and see if we can bring these devices in and then hand them over to the schools.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. So we'll now go into a short break. Thank you.